Hey friends, we've come to the end of chapter 3 and we're going to work on adding and subtracting unlike fractions. So that'll be today's lesson. And then at the end you'll see that your assignment also includes working on the practice test at the end of the chapter. So here we are with the only vocabulary word in this section, and that's unlike fractions. Those are fractions that have different denominators. So if I have, let's say, 1/2 and 3/5, these are definitely considered unlike because the denominators are not the same. When we have unlike fractions and we want to add them together, we're going to have to rewrite the fraction and make those denominators the same. So we want to make them like fractions. So we'll see that in our next example. With this example, we have 3/5 and 1/3. And what we need to do is make sure that those denominators are exactly the same. And to do that, instead of looking at 3/5 as 3/5, we need to maybe consider cutting up the fifths into something that we could also similarly cut up the thirds in. And that answer is 15. So what you do is you think, what number can both 5 and 3 go into evenly? When in doubt, you can multiply your two original denominators. Now, to get the new numerators, you need to think about what you did to 5 in order to get 15. Since we multiplied it by 3, we're going to have to do the same thing to the 3 in the numerator. So instead of having 3/5, we have 9/15. Let's check out this next term. So when I look at the 3 in this denominator here, I turn it into a 15 by multiplying by 5. So I'm going to multiply my numerator by 5 as well, and I'll get 5 up here. So now I've got 9/15 plus 5/15. You remember from the last section that this is really straightforward. We just add the numerator and leave the denominator as it is. 9 plus 5 will give me a 14, and my answer is 14/15. Please try this one on your own. The answers will be given to you at the end of the lesson. Things can get a little bit more complicated, and you know if they can, they will. So here we're adding in example 2, we're adding numbers that are now signed. So we've got these fractions or rational numbers that have signs on them, and then we're going to get into the mixed number. Let's look at part A. Part A over here is asking us to add a negative 5/6 plus plus 1/8. We do need common denominators. I'm going to put my negative here for a second. What number can both 6 and 8 go into evenly? Yes, 48 works, but there's a lower one. Yeah, 24. So I'm going to change my common denominators to 24. And 6 goes into 24 4 times, so I'm going to multiply the numerator by 4, and I get 20. So this fraction, 5/6, became 20/24. Can you guess the numerator for this other side? If you guess 3, you're correct. So now we know that our answer will have a denominator of 24 because the denominator stays the same once you're dealing with like fractions and you're adding or subtracting. But now we've got a negative 20 plus a positive 3. We remember from previous section that we're going to subtract the numbers, and our answer will be 17, but it will be a negative 17, which makes the entire fraction negative 17/24. Moving on, we have negative 3/10, and we're going to add it to negative 5 3/4. What can we change our denominator to that would incorporate, or that 10 could be divided into and 4 could be divided into? Hopefully you guessed 20. Yes, 40 works, but 20 is the smaller of the two values that are easily guessed. And the reason why we choose the smaller value is we have less reducing to do later on. So using 20, 10 goes into 22 times, and we're going to multiply the 3 times the 2, and we get 6. So this is negative 6/20 plus a negative 5. Let's see, let me make that look a little bit better. And what should be my new numerator here? When I went from 4 to 20, I multiplied by 5. Therefore, I should be multiplying my numerator by 5. And hopefully you guys guessed 15. So now we are adding two numbers that are negative. Our rule is to just add and keep the sign negative. So ultimately, we're adding these two fractions together. And I know when I'm done my addition, I'm going to make sure that everything is negative. So negative 60, so I've got 6/20, pardon me, plus 5/15/20. And now when I add the 16, the 6 and the 15, I get 21 over 20, or 21/20ths, and 5, and the whole thing's negative. But wait, 21 over 20 is improper, so I've got this improper mixed fraction. 20 goes into 21 whole times, so I end up with negative 5 plus 1 and 1/20th. I'm about to take this to the next level, lifting it up here. Check this out. My final answer is a negative 5 plus 1 is 6 and 1/20th. Not too shabby. All right, that took a lot of space. I'm only going to give you one to try, but it's involved. Notice that the signs are different, so instead of adding them together, you will end up subtracting. So make sure you get that right and check at the end of the lesson. Our final example, example 3, we're going to subtract fractions and mixed numbers. So as I look at this first one here, I've got 3 over 8. As with adding fractions that are different or unlike fractions, when we subtract, we also need common denominators. And I hope that you see that the common denominator, the best common denominator would be 8. So, because both 4 and 8 go into 8. So the first fraction does not change because the denominator does not change. But since the denominator changes here, and it's now multiplied, it looks like I've multiplied 4 times 2, I've got to multiply the numerator by 2. When I do that, I get 6. And I'm subtracting these two. So I've got 3/8 minus 6/8. My answer is going to be negative, and it's going to be a negative 3. Why? Because 3 minus 6 is negative 3. And so that's my final answer. Let's go ahead and check out this mixed number problem. One way to get around some of the drama with mixed numbers is really to change it to improper fractions and proceed, but we won't do that. We're going to be strong. First, what we're going to do is we're going to come up with a common denominator, and I hope that many of you see that that's 15. So 9 and some fraction with a denominator of 15, I'm going to subtract from that 7 plus some other fraction with a denominator of 15. 5 goes into 15 3 times, and therefore I'm going to multiply the numerator by 3, and I get 9 and 9/15. And with the 7 and 2/3, similarly, since 3 multiplied by 5 gives me 15, I'll multiply the numerator by 5, and I get 10. So now you guys could see an issue. You realize that 9 minus 10 is not going to work out nicely. We could get into using negative numbers, but I think I want to kind of go straight forward with what we've been doing before. Let's borrow, or as they say, regroup. So looking at 8, at 9, I'm going to have to change it to an 8 plus 1. I'm going to make my 1 15 over 15. And then that's how I'm going to, in a sense, borrow for this fraction. So I've got this, all of this is all of this down here. All right, and then I'm going to subtract that 7 from that 7 and 10/15. So when I do my regrouping, I'm left with 8, and 15 plus 9 is going to give me 24. So I'm left with 8 and 24/15. And I've only done that so I could cover this fraction of 10/15 when I subtract. So now I'm going to subtract the whole number minus the whole number, which is 1, and 24 minus 10, which is 14. And so my denominator stays the same because I had like fractions, and I have 1 and 14/15. This is the last you try. Please take a look at this guy. Give it a fair effort. Pause here if you haven't tried it yet, because the next slide will be the answers. All right, so here you have the answers to the you try problems. Please come to class and tell me, Dion, it's wrong, or Dion, I didn't get it, because I need you to let me know if you understand it. And if you get these right, you understand it, but if not, let's go over it. And here's your assignment, friends. Make sure you get it done. Check out the practice test. If you move swiftly through this, check out the practice test. Well, our test is coming up. Please check the calendar, and we'll discuss other ways for you to prepare. Have an excellent day.